Hey you guys, it's Amanda. So today I wanted to talk a little bit further about the function stack for an INTJ. Um, in my last video, I kind of was composing a plan in order to, I guess, get out of an NI-FI loop, which wasn't really that serious. What I understand more is that, or what I've learned about myself is that my subconscious or unconscious teaches me a lot. Like the way that I see it is that it just kind of like brings things forward. Like not only do I like learn using introverted intuition, but I also feel like my subconscious just brings things forward that I need to kind of research or learn about or take a look at. And a lot of times it'll bring things forward in the way of symbols, because I feel like that's just how my unconscious like communicates with me. And it's not going to just be like, it's not like your conscious brain where it's going to be like, oh, you need to do this or that. It's very like subtle. So having introverted intuition as my dominant function, I've just kind of like over time learned how to decipher a lot of these like clues and symbols. That's another reason why I know that I'm an INTJ. So perhaps like you've taken the Myers-Briggs test, the personality test, and from when I first started and I had taken the test and realized I was an INTJ, I had a lot of like apprehension that I actually was one, because the sources that I was going to were kind of those like list formats or based on behavior and stuff. And I was like, I'm not like this. Like, first of all, I'm not like super intelligent. I'm not conventionally intelligent. So that threw me off a bit. And I felt like, I wasn't like super into science, and that really threw me off. But what my subconscious did was it just kind of brought forward a lot of like imagery and symbols and like fictional characters, and it was like all confirmation that yes, I am an INTJ. And after realizing that, I did even deeper research and realized about like the cognitive functions and saw that, oh, I was indeed an INTJ. So if you have any like apprehension about your personality type, I would say, especially if you're an introverted intuitive, that you just kind of like relax about it and like wait for signs or clues to like become apparent to you, because that's what really helped me. Like a lot of things, I'll really try to use like my extroverted thinking to kind of like figure out and learn. Like last night I was trying to really like get into neuropsychology, and I sat down and I was like, I just need to learn everything there is about neuropsychology right now. Let's do it. And then I was like, maybe I should just go back to school and blah, blah, blah. I was like making all these plans for myself. And then I finally just realized like, that's not how I learn. Like it's never been how I learn. Like I just need to like relax. Like I feel like introverted intuition is kind of like your subconscious is kind of like a playground of little children, and like all this data is like each bit of data is like a child. And so what happens is, what you need to do is introduce a new child to the group and like let them kind of play together and let them like interact with each other and just see what they create together. It's not like you need to be bringing in this entire busload of kids. Like that's not how it works. It's kind of like bring in some information, bring in some data a little bit at a time and let it simmer. You're not trying to like overload yourself with information. And I feel like a lot of times like my TE can like really get me into that space where I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finish this right now. I want to complete it. Like I want to master it, blah, blah, blah. Like my TE's got a lot of like strong visions or plans, I would say. And sometimes I have to like rein it back. And I feel like with somebody like me, like the reason for that is because maybe I'm not challenging my extroverted thinking enough on a daily basis. And perhaps there's more that I could be doing to like give it more to work with, like I've been wanting to learn another language for a long time, and I really like the way that Rosetta Stone is set up. I feel like it's kind of set up for people like us that kind of learn in a more like real world way rather than like studying and like, you know, learning things like how school's set up for sensors. I just feel like it's more for intuitives. But perhaps that's just I don't know, that's just what I think. So I'm getting a little off topic with this video. So what I wanted to mention was that I had set up that plan in order to kind of like get out of my head. And I feel like a lot of sources say that if you're in an NI-FI loop, what you shouldn't do is go to your inferior function, which would be extroverted sensing. That it's dangerous, that you can get in an SE grip or whatever, and it's your inferior function, so you shouldn't even like go there. But my personal experience, what I've learned is that a lot of times if I'm really in an introverted intuitive space and I'm there for too long, because of my propensity, is that the right word? Anyways, because I'm like more likely to do things like all the way, like I'm a very like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all the way. And because of that, I feel like I can get into an NI place where I'm just like not taking care of myself. And that's what was happening. Like my subconscious mind was like trying to send me signals that like, hey, you have a body, like you're not taking care of yourself. Let's take a moment to get out of your head and take care of your body. Because a lot of times I can like forget to eat. You know, I just don't get hungry like that, or I, you know, won't be exercising my body, and, you know, your unconscious or subconscious mind views that as a threat because it's trying to take care of your body. So really, I'm not, you know, if any of you out there think that I'm going into an SE grip, you know, that's just not what's happening. So I have this little thing. I mean, this is a very like simple example. So what you have is a trifecta, dude. I'm just kidding. It's a trifecta. So you have your, can you see this? So you have your spirit there at the top, your mind, and your body, which serve as kind of the anchors for your spirit. So you need to be taking care of like this trifecta or whatever. It's important, like, because you do live on the earth, you do have a mind that takes care of your body, and then you have your spirit. And I did mention that, you know, I went through an awakening process or whatever. I spent an entire year kind of like delving and locked into my own psyche, and that was great. It was amazing. But before that, what had happened was I spent a lot of time being very sensory. And I've noticed a pattern of this, but let me just explain. So I felt like to prepare for that year, like I unknowingly was getting ready for that entire year by, you know, seeing a lot of things. I was going to the lake like every weekend. I was like running, I was exercising, I was eating a lot, and I was just kind of like getting my body prepared to go through that entire year like a bear does for hibernation, where it like kind of lives off everything that it like ate in the springtime or whatever, and then goes into hibernation. And that's what I felt like I was doing. So it was like a very long period of time with body, and even longer time with kind of spirit, I'd say. And then I came back around to kind of like mind, and I felt like these, you know, transitioned, and I focused on each one separately. And hopefully where I'm at right now is I feel like I'm kind of working on juggling these three aspects at once. So I'm not giving all my attention to one area, but I'm being able to be a more balanced person and take care of my physical body while also like working on myself, and developing a plan that would satisfy my spirit and like what I want to do in life. So, yeah, so that's what I did. And I joined a gym. Yesterday was my first day. It kicked my ass. I didn't realize how out of shape I was. And the guy, or the teacher in my class, was like, how much are you eating? So obviously that was confirmation that I'm not eating enough. He's like, that's not enough. I was like, I ate a Cliff Bar and a banana this morning. He's like, that's not enough. So, I mean, I about died in the class. But what it is I didn't just join any gym. I'm not about like hashtag gains, or I'm not trying to look good in a gym selfie. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just not my focus. I'm trying to just take care of myself, challenge my mind, and, you know, feel better and create dopamine and serotonin so that I have more energy and more motivation to do the things that I actually want to do. So basically, I joined a boxing gym. So I'm able to just go to one class a week and kind of like challenge myself mentally while getting a workout. And it's kind of a little more expensive because it is a boxing gym. It's a little further away than I'd like to drive, but I've been to it before. I actually joined it for just a very short time before I ever went through that awakening phase. So I'm going back, and so that's my plan. One time a week is not that big of a commitment, but it's enough to like kind of like just add a little bit, you know, to my schedule that I already have. As an INTJ, I feel like where I want to be is to kind of like be able to use my intuition when I'm out there in the real world. And I feel like I can do this at work. Like at work, it's very like, I put myself in kind of like an intuitive bubble where I'm like out there and I'm experiencing things and I'm in a sensory place, but I'm still able to kind of like retreat back into my own head and work from a very intuitive place. And that's the way I feel most successful. I just kind of like allow things to come to me. And I'm using TE too, but it's mostly my introverted intuition. I feel like when you go out and you're in this intuitive bubble, you have to be careful, like because you're out in the physical world. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll end up running into things or being super clumsy, or, you know, just kind of, I'll forget people's names, which in my job, it's pretty important to remember people's names. Like I'm just not in that kind of headspace where I'm thinking about stuff like that. So, and I would explain it as like, it's kind of like everything's like in your peripheral, just kind of getting an impression of the things that are around you. Like you're not really like focused in, you're more like in your head, but you are experiencing the things around you. You're just kind of getting like a basic idea of where things are. And sometimes you kind of like aren't judging like where things are in space or in time or whatever. So a lot of times I can get like confused about how much time has passed and stuff like that. But it still allows me to kind of like stay safe and still work from an intuitive place. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that I like to be locked in and sensory in times where it's like really necessary for me to be sensory. And I feel like driving, or say I'm committing to like a sport or something, like I have to be 100%, like I can't be intuitive in that time. I feel like it's dangerous to do so because, you know, you can't, I mean, it's more dangerous. You're not paying attention and something could happen, like a mistake could happen. So I try to be really sensory in those times and very using my extroverted functions. The problem is that when I use my extroverted functions together, and I'm mainly using those things like extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing, I feel like I can get really aggressive, really competitive, and just like a very different version of me than I normally am. And I feel like one of the reasons for that is because, you know, I mentioned that a lot of people who have extroverted sensing as their inferior function, they're very overstimulated by sensory stimuli. They're overwhelmed by it or whatever. And I feel like, so when you're being committed to being very sensory and whatever, I feel like you're very on, like your nervous system is like super sensitive, like you're on guard. So like you're exerting a lot of energy to do that, for one. You're using a lot of energy and you're just more sensitive to all this data than most people would be. So like say when I'm driving for instance and I'm being very sensory and I'm just like locked and loaded. Like if somebody does something like I'm like it makes me like angrier than I normally would be just because I feel like it's a threat to my survival. I don't know, it's hard. So I don't try to go there like very often. I just feel like in times where I need to be super safe or where, you know, like you're operating a 2 ton, you know, killing machine basically. And so I feel like, you know, I could either be intuitive doing that and like kind of maybe miss things here or there and get in an accident, or I could just deal with being a little more aggressive and, you know, try to like calm myself down, but also be very safe. One last thing that I wanted to mention is that in my experience, I feel like when I take a sensory break, like when I say go on vacation, or maybe when I do go and exercise like that, or just go out into the world and like be very sensory and present and in the moment, like that will really trigger my intuition. Like it'll just make my intuition go into overdrive. Like it feeds myself more data for my intuition to work with, and I'll end up like, you know, really going into an intuitive space afterwards. Like one this past summer we went on vacation for like a week and I came back and literally slept for like 36 hours. And then when I woke up, I was just in a very intuitive space. It was like, yeah, I had to recover a little bit, but I actually benefited from that really well. And I feel like that happens a lot. Like when I take a sensory break and a moment to kind of just be in the world and gather more data for myself to use in a relaxed environment, not really like when I'm trying to like force things, but I'm just kind of like more relaxed and taking in, you know, information, taking in the world around me. So I don't think it's super bad to be like to work on your inferior function. I think it's actually very positive. So anyways, I just thought I'd make this video. Sorry if it doesn't make too much sense. And I'll talk to you later.
Look at this. I don't know if it's a wasp nest or what, but if you look at it, it reminds you of cardboard. It's amazing, like how something so paper-like, because of the structure of it, can be so durable. It's actually really cool. Like we just learn everything from nature and animals, because it's like a perfectly working machine or computer, and everything, how everything's made, and how human beings kind of just learn by observation, the instinct of different animals, and just kind of copy everything and refine it in a way that suits us.